I know how this sounds. But the waiting room had those pale green vinyl chairs, the ones that squeak when you shift your weight, and I'd been sitting in one for 47 minutes with a February draft cutting through the gap in the window frame. And the receptionist was wearing a necklace with a tiny silver stethoscope that kept catching the overhead light, and I remember thinking that if I had to hear one more automated voice say, "Please take a seat," I would walk out. That's when my mother-in-law leaned over and said it loud enough for the woman with the twins to look up from her phone. She said it loud enough for the man in the Carhartt jacket to stop scrolling. She said it to the nurse at the intake desk, clear as a bell. "She can't give me grandchildren. That's why my son left her." And the nurse didn't know what to do with that. No one did. So I walked to the reception desk, my heels clicking on the linoleum, and I asked the girl with the stethoscope necklace to put something on the TV. Just something. Anything. The screen flickered. And there it was. I hadn't been back to that hospital since the last round of IVF. 3 years, 4 months, and 11 days. That's not the kind of math you try to remember. It just sticks. Like the way the ultrasound gel felt cold no matter how many times they told you it would be warm. Like the way the nurse would say, "Let's see what we have today," and you'd hold your breath until she found something, anything, and then she'd say, "Give it more time." And you'd nod and drive home and park the car and sit there with your hands on the wheel until the windshield fogged over. Tom was usually the one who broke the silence first. He'd say, "We'll try again," and I'd say, "I know," and we'd go inside and microwave something and watch the news and pretend the day had been normal. That was our routine. The routine of people who have run out of things to say but haven't run out of reasons to stay. Or so I thought. The hospital was a place I'd trained myself to see as neutral territory. Just a building. Just rooms with machines. Just people in scrubs who didn't know my name unless they looked at the chart. That was the trick. You could walk through those doors and become a case number, a file, a set of dates and results. You didn't have to be the woman who'd spent her 30s trying to make something grow inside her. You could just be a patient. Anonymous. Manageable. Except that morning, I wasn't anonymous. I was Helen. And Helen was sitting in a plastic chair with a stack of magazines from 2019 on the table beside her. And Helen was listening to her mother-in-law announce her personal medical history to a room full of strangers, like she was reading a grocery list. Carol. That's her name. Carol, 72, retired elementary school teacher, pearl earrings every single day, hair cut short and sprayed into something immovable. She'd driven herself to the hospital because she had a checkup for her blood pressure, and I'd offered to meet her there because Tom had asked me to. He'd said, "She's been worried about the results, just sit with her, it's not a big deal." And I'd said yes because I was still saying yes to things. That was my problem. That was always my problem. I was 46. I had a house in a neighborhood where people waved at each other, a career as a legal consultant that I'd built from the ground up, a retirement account that made my accountant smile, and a husband who had stopped touching me somewhere around the 2-year mark of trying. The kind of not touching that was careful. Gentle. Like I was made of glass. Like if he pressed too hard I'd break, and he'd have to pick up the pieces, and he was tired of picking up pieces. That was the story I told myself. That he was tired of picking up pieces. Not that he'd stopped wanting to touch me. Not that he'd found someone else to touch. I didn't know about Claire then. I didn't know she existed. I didn't know about the apartment on the other side of town with the gray couch and the art prints from IKEA and the bed that he'd bought new sheets for. The ones with the high thread count because he'd told me he preferred percale, and I'd believed him when he said he'd just done research online. I didn't know about the dinners at places I'd never heard of, the ones with no sign out front, the ones where you had to know someone to get a table. I didn't know about the texts he sent when he was in the bathroom, the way he angled his phone so I couldn't see the screen, the way he'd stopped leaving it face up on the counter. But I knew something was wrong. You don't live with someone for 22 years and not know when the air changes. It's in the way they don't ask about your day. It's in the way they stop leaving their coffee cup in the sink, the way they start putting it straight in the dishwasher, the way they stop doing the small careless things that used to drive you crazy. It's in the silence that settles between you like snow. Quiet at first, then deep, then impossible to walk through. Carol had always been a difficult woman. That's the kindest way to say it. She believed her son could do no wrong, which is standard for mothers, but she'd taken it to an unusual level. She kept a mental ledger of every time I'd disappointed her, every holiday I'd chosen my own family over hers, every meal I'd cooked that wasn't quite right, every birthday present that missed the mark. She'd forgiven me for none of it. And she'd never forgiven me for not being able to give her a grandchild. That last part was the one she couldn't let go. She'd never said it directly to my face, not until that day in the waiting room. She'd said it in other ways. Little digs. It's a shame you never got to experience motherhood. Tom would have made such a wonderful father. I see all my friends with their grandchildren and I just think, well, God has a plan. That kind of thing. The kind of thing you're supposed to smile through because she's old and she doesn't mean it the way it sounds and she's just sad really, underneath it all. But I don't think she was sad. I think she was angry. I think she'd been angry for years. Angry that her son's life hadn't followed the script she'd written. Angry that I was the variable she couldn't control. Angry that she had to sit in waiting rooms and listen to other women talk about their children's children while she had nothing to show for her 72 years of existence. And I'd understood that in a way. I'd felt sorry for her. I'd made excuses for her. I'd told Tom it's fine, she's your mother, we'll visit her, and I'd held my tongue when she made comments about my age, my weight, my job, my house, my cooking, my everything. I'd held my tongue for 22 years. And then she said I was barren to a room full of strangers, and something in me stopped holding. The TV was mounted on the far wall, angled slightly so you could see it from most of the chairs. It had been playing some morning show when I walked in, the kind with two hosts who laughed at each other's jokes and a segment about healthy smoothies. I hadn't been paying attention. No one had been paying attention. It was just background noise, the kind of white sound that fills a room so people don't have to sit in complete silence with their anxiety. When Carol said it, the room went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people are politely ignoring something. The kind of quiet where everyone has frozen mid-motion, where the woman with the twins has one hand in her purse and the other holding her phone, and she's not moving either one. Where the man in the Carhartt has his thumb on his screen and it's just hanging there in the air. The nurse at the intake desk looked at me, then at Carol, then back at me, and her mouth opened slightly like she was about to say something, but didn't know what. Carol didn't lower her voice. She didn't lean in. She said it like she was making an announcement. She's been trying for years, she said, turning to the woman next to her, a woman with a pink sweater who was holding a clipboard and looking deeply uncomfortable. Thousands of dollars. In vitro. They told her it wasn't going to work and she kept trying. My son wasted his best years on that. And that was when I stood up. I didn't plan it. My legs just moved. I walked past Carol, past the nurse, past the woman with the twins who was now staring at me with something that looked like pity, and I went to the reception desk. The girl behind the desk was maybe 22, maybe younger, with a stethoscope necklace and a name tag that said Amber and a face that said she wanted to be anywhere else. "Hi," I said. "Can you put something on the TV, something with sound? Just anything." Amber looked at me, then at the TV, then back at me. She didn't know what to do. She was young and she was trying to be professional and she had no idea what was happening. "Oh," she said. "What do you want to watch?" "Anything," I said. "I don't care. Just put something on so everyone stops staring at me." She picked up a remote. She pressed a button. The screen flickered from the morning show to a different screen, one with blue text on a white background, the kind of screen you see when someone's pulled up a patient record. I saw my name at the top. Helen Patricia Hart. My date of birth. My address. And then a note in bold red text, "Patient spreading false information. Advised to seek counseling." The room went quiet again. But this time it was a different kind of quiet. This was the quiet of people reading something they weren't supposed to see, the quiet of people realizing that the person who'd just made a public spectacle was about to get a taste of her own medicine. I watched Carol's face as she processed it. Her mouth opened. Her eyes went wide. She started moving toward the reception desk, one hand reaching out, the other gripping her purse like a weapon. "Give me that," she said. "Give me that remote. That's not right. That's a mistake." Amber pulled the remote back. She was shaking a little, but she held her ground. "Ma'am, please sit down," she said. "That's confidential information. You're not supposed to see that." Carol grabbed for the remote. Her fingers closed around the edge of it, and for a second I thought she was going to win, thought she was going to yank it out of Amber's hand and turn the TV off and pretend this had never happened. But security was already moving. Two men in blue polos, the kind with the embroidered badges and the walkie-talkies. They came out of nowhere, it seemed, and one of them put his hand on Carol's arm and the other one stepped between her and the desk. "Ma'am, please step back," the first one said. "You need to take a seat." "I'm not sitting down," Carol said. "That's my daughter-in-law's information. That's private." "Who put that up there? Who did that?" I looked at the TV screen. I looked at my name in blue text. I looked at the red letters spelling out patients spreading false information. Advised to seek counseling. And I realized slowly that this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some glitch. Someone had put that up there. Someone had known this was going to happen. Someone had planned for it. I looked at Amber. Her face was pale, but there was something in her eyes. A flicker. A recognition. She knew more than she was letting on. And then a woman in the corner, a heavily pregnant woman with a bright orange coat and a flower in her hair, started laughing. Not a quiet laugh. A loud laugh, the kind that makes people turn their heads. She looked at me and she put her hand up, and I thought for a second she was pointing, waving something. But no. She was offering a high five. I took it. I don't know why. I just took it. And Carol, with a security guard on each arm, said something that I couldn't hear over the noise of her own fury, and they walked her out the side door, and the TV stayed on, and my name stayed up there in blue and red. And the pregnant woman patted her belly and said she had that coming, and I sat back down in the pale green chair and waited for the world to make sense again. It didn't. Not that day. But it started to. The thing about being 46 and thinking you know your life is that you don't know anything. You've built a structure out of assumptions. You've put your trust in routines and patterns and the way things have always been. And then one day someone says something in a hospital waiting room, and a TV screen shows you something you didn't expect, and a pregnant stranger high-fives you, and you realize the whole thing was a house of cards. I sat in that chair for another 40 minutes. I didn't call Tom. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there and watched the TV screen until someone finally turned it off, and I listened to the hum of the lights, and I thought about all the things I didn't know. I didn't know that Tom had been the one to put that record in the system. I didn't know that he'd called the hospital the night before, that he'd spoken to someone in administration, that he'd told them his mother might try something, that he'd asked them to have a record ready, just in case. I didn't know that he'd been watching out for me in a way that I'd never expected, that he'd seen this coming before I had, that he'd taken a step to protect me from his own mother without telling me. I also didn't know that he'd been sleeping with Claire for 2 years. I didn't know that the apartment existed. I didn't know about the sheets, the restaurant, the texts, the way he'd angle his phone. I didn't know any of it. But I was about to. Amber found me in the parking lot. I was sitting in my car, a 2015 Honda Accord that had seen better days, with the engine off and the windows fogged and my hands still gripping the wheel like I was about to drive somewhere. I wasn't. I was just sitting. She tapped on the glass. I rolled it down. "Hey," she said. "I'm sorry about what happened in there. I didn't mean to put your information up. It was supposed to be something else. The nurse told me to have a record ready, just in case, but I hit the wrong button. I pulled up the wrong file." I looked at her. She was shivering. It was February and she didn't have a coat. "The wrong file," I said. "That was my file. My name. My information." "I know," she said. "I'm sorry." The nurse gave me a code for a different patient. A woman named Helen. "I didn't know it was you. I just saw the name and pulled it up." "A woman named Helen," I said. "That's me. I'm Helen." She nodded. I figured that out when the screen came up. But by then it was too late. Your mother-in-law was already yelling, and security was already there, and I couldn't just turn it off. It would have looked suspicious. I didn't know what to say. She was young. She was trying to do her job. She'd made a mistake. But it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like something else. "Who told you to have a record ready?" I said. "Tom. Your husband. He called last night. He said his mother was going to be here today, and she might cause a scene, and he wanted to be able to shut it down if she said something inappropriate. He said she'd been spreading rumors about you. He said the hospital could get in trouble if she said something in front of other patients, and we didn't do anything about it. So the nurse told me to have a record ready, just in case. A general record. Something that would show we were aware of the situation. And the record said what it said, I said. About spreading false information. Tom wrote that, she said. He sent it over. He said he wanted to make sure the message was clear. I didn't know he meant you. I thought he meant his mother. I thought it was her record. I thought it was her name on the screen. I looked at her. She was shaking, and it wasn't just the cold. She was scared. She thought she was going to get in trouble. She thought I was going to file a complaint. You're not in trouble, I said. You were doing what you were told. She let out a breath. Thank you. I really didn't mean to. It's fine, I said. It's done. Just go inside. Get warm. She walked back to the building, her arms crossed against the cold, and I sat in my car and thought about Tom. About how he'd called the hospital. About how he'd written that record. About how he'd been watching out for me even while he was keeping secrets. The information gap was the thing that broke it open. I didn't know what Tom had done. He didn't know that I knew about Claire. Claire didn't know that Tom had called the hospital. And Carol, sitting in the security office, being told she was banned from the building for 6 months, didn't know that her son was the one who'd set the whole thing in motion. That was the first reversal. The weak one. The one that didn't feel like a victory because I didn't even know I was winning. The second reversal was bigger. I found out about Claire because of a credit card statement. Not the kind you get in the mail. The kind you see when you log into the joint account because you need to check if the car insurance went through, and you notice a charge to a flower shop in a neighborhood you've never been to, and you think, that's strange, Tom doesn't buy flowers. And then you look at the date, and it's your anniversary and you didn't get flowers that day. You got a card, a Hallmark card with a generic message, the kind he'd been giving you for years, the kind that said love you, but didn't say anything specific. I called the flower shop. I told them I was his wife. I asked if they could tell me what he'd ordered. And the woman on the phone said, oh, the pink peonies with the note that said, for Claire, always, and I said, yes, that's the one. And I wrote down the delivery address and I hung up and I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside. That was the moment I started knowing things. The moment the information gap started tilting the other way. I didn't confront him right away. That's not how I work. I gather. I organize. I make a file. I did it with evidence in legal cases, and I did it with evidence in my marriage. I had a whole folder in my mind, and then in a real folder, tucked behind my sweaters in the closet. Screenshots of the flower shop confirmation. Photos of the apartment building, taken from my car when I drove by. A note about the restaurant he'd taken her to, the one with no sign out front, the one where I'd have to know someone to get a table. I didn't know anyone. That was the point. I also started noticing the things he didn't say. The way he'd stop talking when his phone buzzed. The way he'd take a shower as soon as he got home, like he was washing something off. The way he'd look at me across the dinner table and I'd think, you don't see me, and I'd be right. He was there, but he wasn't there. That was the thing. He'd been there, but he wasn't there for a while, and I'd been pretending not to notice, because pretending was easier than admitting what I knew. The pregnant woman from the waiting room found me at the coffee shop a few weeks later. I didn't recognize her at first. She was wearing a different coat, a gray one, and her hair was pulled back, and she was holding a cup of tea in a way that balanced against her belly. Hey, she said. You're the woman. From the hospital. I looked up from my laptop. I was working on a case, something about a property dispute, something I'd been trying to focus on for the better part of an hour. I'm sorry, I said. I don't the TV, she said. Your mother-in-law. The high five. I remembered. Of course I remembered. Yeah, I said. That was me. She sat down without asking. The kind of sit-down that assumes permission. I'm Marta, she said. I was there for my glucose test. Worst drink I've ever had. But that moment made the whole thing worth it. She really said that to the nurse. In front of everyone she did, I said. And the TV just showed her record just like that. It showed my record, I said. My name. She was spreading false information about me. The hospital knew. Marta shook her head. I've been telling everyone about that. My husband. My sister. My mother. They didn't believe me. They said that's not how hospitals work. That privacy laws, HIPAA, whatever. They said it couldn't happen. But it did. I was there. I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her that Tom had called the hospital, that he'd set it up, that he'd found a way around the privacy thing because he knew someone in administration, and he'd explained the situation, and they'd made an exception. I didn't tell her any of that because I didn't know if I was ready to talk about Tom yet, to admit that he'd been on my side and not on my side at the same time, to try to explain the complicated thing he'd done while he was doing something even more complicated behind my back. I'm pregnant, Marta said. That's not a secret. But I've been thinking about you. About what she said. About the way you just stood up and walked over to that desk. Like you didn't even think about it. I didn't, I said. I just did it. That's the thing, she said. That's the whole thing. You didn't let her get away with it. You didn't scream. You didn't cry. You just did something. I didn't tell her that I'd been in therapy for a year, that I'd been learning to do things, to take action, to stop freezing in moments of conflict. I didn't tell her that I'd been working on myself while my marriage was falling apart around me, that I'd been trying to become the kind of person who walks to the reception desk and asks for the TV to be turned on. I didn't tell her any of that because I still felt like a fraud, like I was performing a version of myself that didn't quite fit. But I smiled. Thanks, I said. I appreciate that. Look, Marta said. I don't know you. But I'm having a baby in 3 weeks, and I've been scared, and I've been thinking about what happens when people say things, when they try to tell you who you are. And that day, in that waiting room, you showed me something. That you don't have to take it. You can just do something. She stood up, or tried to. It took her a moment. I'm having a girl, she said. I'm going to tell her about you. About the woman who got high-fived by a stranger. It's a good story. Tell her, I said. It's all true. I sat in the coffee shop for another hour after Marta left. I thought about Carol, sitting in her house with her pearl earrings and her anger, probably telling her friends that I'd humiliated her in public, probably leaving out the part where she started it. I thought about Tom, at work or at the apartment or somewhere else, somewhere I wasn't, living a life that I only knew about in fragments. I thought about the record on the screen. Patient spreading false information. Advised to seek counseling. I thought about who'd written that. Maybe an administrator. Maybe the person Tom had called. Maybe someone who'd decided, for reasons I didn't understand, that my mother-in-law's cruelty was something that needed to be addressed in public, on a TV screen, in front of a room full of strangers. And I thought about what it meant. That someone had seen what I was dealing with and decided to help. That I hadn't been alone. Even when I felt like I was that was the thing I kept coming back to. The thing that made me feel like maybe I wasn't as invisible as I thought. That maybe there were people in the world who could see me, who could see what was happening, who were willing to step in even if I didn't know how to ask. I started driving by the apartment building. Not every day. Just sometimes. When I was on that side of town. When I had an excuse. I'd park across the street, and I'd watch the windows, and I'd try to see if I could see anything. A shadow moving. A light turning on. A sign that he was there. I never saw anything. But I knew he was there. I could feel it. The apartment was on the 3rd floor. I knew that from the delivery address. I knew the building had a buzzer system and a lobby with gray tiles and a plant in the corner that was probably fake. I'd seen it in the photos on Google Maps. I'd zoomed in on the street view, and I'd looked at every detail. I didn't know why I was doing it. It wasn't like I was going to confront her. It wasn't like I was going to knock on the door and introduce myself. I was just watching, trying to understand, trying to make the invisible visible. The thing about betrayal is that it's abstract until it's not. You know it's happening, but you don't really know. You don't feel it. You just suspect it. And then you get a piece of evidence, and another piece, and another, and suddenly it's real. It's a building. It's a woman's name. It's pink peonies delivered on your anniversary. That was the thing that got me. The anniversary. He'd sent her flowers on our anniversary. He'd written for Claire always on a card. And he'd given me a Hallmark card with a generic message and a half-hearted kiss on the cheek. I thought about that a lot. About the difference between the two cards. The one I got and the one she got. The one that said love you and the one that said always. I thought about the word always. What it meant. What it implied. That he'd been saying it to her for a while. That he was planning on saying it for a while longer. That he'd already made a choice. And it wasn't me. I started therapy 3 weeks after that. Not because of Tom. Because of Carol. Because of what she'd said in the waiting room and what I'd felt when I heard it. Not the anger. The other thing. The thing that came before the anger. The thing that made me freeze. You know what I said to the nurse, Carol had said. She can't give me grandchildren. That's why my son left her. Not, she can't have children. Not, they've been struggling. She'd made it personal. She'd made it about me. She'd made it about my body and its failures, like my uterus was a piece of equipment that had malfunctioned and I should have been recalled. The therapist's name was Dr. Miriam Patel. She had silver glasses and a calm voice and an office with a bowl of hard candies on the coffee table that I never took. She listened to me tell the whole story. The waiting room. The TV. The high five. The flower shop. The apartment building. The card that said always. That's a lot, she said. That's a lot to carry. I'm not carrying it, I said. I'm just sorting through it. Trying to figure out what's real and what's not. What do you think is real? I thought about it. The waiting room was real. The TV screen was real. The pregnant woman was real. Tom's affair is real. His mother's hatred is real. But the rest of it feels like it's happening to someone else. Like I'm watching a movie. Dissociation, she said. It's a common response to trauma. Trauma, I said. That's a strong word. Is it you were publicly humiliated in a room full of strangers by your mother-in-law? You discovered your husband has been having an affair for 2 years. You're dealing with the end of a 22-year marriage. That's trauma. I didn't argue with her. I just sat there and looked at the hard candies and thought about how I used to like butterscotch when I was a kid, and I hadn't had one in years, and I didn't know why. Let's talk about your husband, she said. What do you want from him? Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from him. You don't want an apology and explanation. I want him to tell me the truth, I said. I want him to stop lying. I want him to look me in the eye and tell me why he did it. Why he stayed. Why he kept pretending. And if he can't do that, then I want him to leave. I want him to go to his apartment with his gray couch and his art prints and his woman, and I want him to stay there. I don't want to see him. I don't want to hear from him. I want him to be gone. That's a lot of wanting, she said. What do you want for yourself? I didn't have an answer for that. I'd been so focused on Tom, on Carol, on the affair, on the lies, on the things that had been done to me, that I hadn't thought about what I wanted for myself. I wanted to stop feeling like a victim. I wanted to stop feeling like the woman in the waiting room who just sat there and took it. I want to be okay, I said. I want to wake up in the morning and not think about him. I want to go to work and not check my phone every 5 minutes. I want to cook dinner and not wonder if he's going to show up. I want to be the person I was before all of this. That person is still there, she said. She just needs to be let out. I started going to the coffee shop more often. The same one where Marta had found me. It was close to my office, and the baristas knew my order, and there was a corner table where I could work without being interrupted. It became my space. My routine. One morning, I was sitting there with my laptop and a cup of Earl Grey when I saw a woman I didn't recognize walk in. She was about 30, maybe younger, with dark hair pulled back and a sharp coat and the kind of confident stride that said she knew exactly where she was going. She ordered a latte, paid with a card, and then she looked around the room and her eyes landed on me. She walked over. Helen, she said. I didn't recognize her voice. I didn't recognize her face. Yes, I'm Claire, she said. I think we need to talk. I froze. My hands went cold around my coffee cup. My heart started pounding in a way that felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I stared at her, at the sharp coat, at the dark hair, at the face that had been invisible to me for 2 years, and was now standing in front of me in a coffee shop. Claire, I said. Okay. She sat down across from me. The same spot Marta had sat in weeks ago. She put her latte on the table, and she folded her hands, and she looked at me with an expression that I couldn't read. Not guilty. Not defiant. Something in between. Tom doesn't know I'm here, she said. I wanted to talk to you before I talked to him. Why? Because I think you deserve to hear the truth from someone who isn't lying to you. I didn't say anything. I just waited. She took a breath and started talking. I didn't know he was married, she said. When we first met, he told me he was separated. He said you'd been having problems for years, that you'd grown apart, that you were just waiting for the right time to tell your families. He said you were still living together, but it was just for show. He made it sound like you were already divorced in every way that mattered. I didn't react. I just let her talk. I found out about 6 months ago, she said. A mutual friend mentioned something about his wife, and I said, he doesn't have a wife, and she told me everything. She showed me a photo of you two from a Christmas party. You were wearing a red dress, and he had his arm around you, and you both looked so normal. Like a real couple. Like everything he'd told me was a lie. You stayed with him, I said. After you found out. She nodded. I confronted him. He told me it was complicated. He said he was going to leave you, but he had to do it the right way, and I believed him. I was stupid. I was in love with him. Were you? I don't know, she said. I thought I was. But now I'm not sure if I was in love with him or with the person he pretended to be. They're not the same person. She looked at her coffee. She didn't drink it. She just stared at it like it held answers. I'm pregnant, she said. 3 months. I haven't told him yet. I wanted to tell you first. The air went out of the room. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Not at first. I just sat there, looking at her, and I waited for them to click into place. Pregnant, I said. 3 months, she repeated. I'm keeping it. I don't know if he wants it. I don't know if he wants me. But I'm keeping it. I didn't know what to feel. I thought I'd feel anger. I thought I'd feel jealousy. I thought I'd feel the sharp pang of everything I'd wanted and couldn't have. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a flatness. A stillness. Congratulations, I said. That's good. If you want it. She looked at me like she was waiting for something else. An explosion. A reaction. Something. Say something, she said. Please. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something. I've been carrying this for weeks. I needed to tell you. I needed you to know. I know, I said. You told me. That's done. What do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, she said. I just wanted to be honest. I wanted to do the right thing. He's been lying to both of us. I thought if I told you the truth, maybe we could. I don't know. Maybe you could tell me what to do. I looked at her. She was young. She was scared. She was carrying the child that I'd tried for years to have. And she was sitting across from me, asking me for advice. You want to know what to do, I said. Fine. Here's what you do. You tell him you're pregnant. You let him decide what he wants. And if he chooses you, you make sure he tells me. You make sure he doesn't drag this out. You make sure he doesn't keep living in 2 places with 2 lives. She nodded. And if he doesn't choose me, then you figure out how to do it on your own. You're young. You have a job. You'll figure it out. She looked at me, and for a second I saw something in her eyes. Gratitude. Relief. Like I'd given her permission to make a choice. Thank you, she said. I didn't know how this was going to go. I thought you'd hate me. I don't hate you, I said. I don't hate anyone. I'm just tired. I'm tired of being the last person to know things. She left after that. She didn't finish her latte. She just stood up and walked out of the coffee shop, and I never saw her again. Not in person, anyway. I heard about her later, from Tom, in the conversation that would end everything. But that day, in the coffee shop, I sat there for a long time. I looked at the cup she'd left on the table, the latte she'd paid for and hadn't drunk. And I thought about what it meant. That she'd come to me first. That she'd chosen to tell me before she told him. That she'd seen me as the person who deserved the truth. I thought about the waiting room, the TV, the record, patient spreading false information, advised to seek counseling. I'd been the patient. I'd been spreading false information to myself. That I wasn't enough. That I was broken. That I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. But Claire's pregnancy wasn't a judgment on me. It wasn't a sign that I'd failed. It was just a thing that had happened. A thing that was happening to someone else. And I didn't need to feel anything about it except what I felt. Which was nothing. Which was okay. I went to see Dr. Patel the next day. I told her about the coffee shop, about Claire, about the pregnancy, about how I hadn't felt anything. That's not unusual, she said. You've been through a lot. Your emotions are still catching up. Does it make me a bad person? I said. That I didn't feel anything, does it feel like you're a bad person? No. It feels like I'm numb. Like I've run out of emotions. Like someone drained the tank. Let's work on filling the tank back up, she said. But slowly. One piece at a time. I started going for walks after that. Long walks. The kind where you don't have a destination. I'd walk through my neighborhood, past the houses with the neatly trimmed lawns, and the driveways with the SUVs, and the kids' bicycles left in the front yard. I'd walk past the park where I'd never taken a child, the school where I'd never dropped anyone off. I'd walk past the places that used to make me sad, and I'd keep walking. One afternoon, I ended up at the hospital. The same one. The one with the pale green chairs and the TV screen. I didn't go inside. I just stood across the street and looked at it. It was just a building. Just rooms with machines. Just people in scrubs who didn't know my name. I'd been afraid of it for so long. Afraid of the tests. Afraid of the results. Afraid of the silence in the car on the way home. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was just standing there, looking at it, and I was fine. Tom came home late that night. He came home late most nights. But this time, he looked different. Tired. Worn out. He walked into the kitchen, and I was sitting at the table with a cup of tea and a file, and I looked up at him, and I knew that he knew. She told me, I said. She came to see me at the coffee shop. She told me everything. He didn't pretend. He just put his keys on the counter, and he sat down across from me. He looked at me with that tired expression, and he didn't say anything. She's pregnant, I said. You're going to be a father. I know, he said. She called me. Right after she talked to you. She came to me first, I said. She wanted me to know before you did. She wanted to be honest. That sounds like her, he said. She's a good person. I don't care if she's a good person, I said. I care that you've been lying to me. I care that you've been living two lives. I care that you let your mother humiliate me in a hospital waiting room, and you didn't even tell me you were planning to protect me. I didn't know how to tell you, he said. I thought if I told you about the waiting room, you'd figure out the rest. You'd start asking questions. You'd find out about Claire. I found out about Claire anyway, I said. I found out because you weren't careful. Because you left a trail. Because you thought you could keep all of this hidden and you couldn't. He put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he said. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I've said it before. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. Sorry isn't enough, I said. Sorry doesn't fix anything. Sorry doesn't make me trust you. Sorry doesn't make me want to stay. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to stay. I'm just telling you. I'm sorry. The divorce papers came a week later. I'd been expecting them. I'd been waiting for them. But when I saw them on the table, I felt something. Not sadness. Not anger. Just a sense of finality. Of closure. I signed them without reading them. I didn't care about the details. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted to be done. I wanted to be free. Tom moved out the next weekend. He took his clothes and his books and his coffee mug and a few other things. He left the furniture. He left the house. He left me. I stood in the living room and watched him drive away. He didn't look back. I didn't expect him to. And then I was alone. For the first time in 22 years, I was alone. It felt like freedom. I thought being alone would be hard. I thought I'd miss him. I thought I'd wander through the house and feel his absence in every room, in every empty space where his things used to be. But that didn't happen. Instead, I felt lighter. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for years, and I'd finally set it down. The first week, I rearranged the furniture. I moved the couch so it faced the window instead of the TV. I took down the framed photos of us from the hallway and replaced them with prints I'd bought at a gallery but never hung. I painted the kitchen a color Tom had always hated, a deep blue that made me happy every time I walked in. The second week, I started cooking again. Real cooking. Not the quick meals I'd thrown together when he was late, when I didn't know if he was coming home, when I'd eat alone and leave his portion in the fridge. I made things I'd always wanted to try. Roasted chicken with herbs. Homemade pasta. A chocolate cake that took 3 hours and was worth every minute. The third week, I called my sister, Diane. She lived 3 states away and we hadn't talked in months. I told her everything. The waiting room, the TV, the apartment, Claire, the pregnancy, the divorce. Jesus, Helen, she said. Why didn't you call me sooner? I didn't know how, I said. I didn't know what to say. You could have said, my mother-in-law is a monster and my husband is a liar and I need you to tell me I'm going to be okay. Are you going to tell me that you're going to be okay? She said. You're going to be more than okay. You're going to be great. You've been carrying that man for 22 years. Now you get to carry yourself. I started thinking about Tom less. Not consciously. It just happened. One day I realized I hadn't thought about him for a whole morning, and then a whole day, and then a whole week. He was still there in the background, but he wasn't taking up space anymore. He was just a person I used to know. I thought about Claire sometimes. Not with jealousy. With something closer to curiosity. I wondered how she was doing. Whether she'd told her family. Whether she was scared. Whether she was happy. I didn't want anything bad to happen to her. She was young. She was having a baby. She was starting a life with a man who'd lied to both of us. That wasn't her fault. That was his. I ran into Carol at the grocery store. The local one, the one I'd been going to for years. I was in the produce aisle, picking out avocados, and I looked up and there she was. Same pearl earrings. Same short hair. Same immovable expression. She saw me. I saw her. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she walked toward me. Not quickly. Not angrily. Just walking. Helen, she said. I heard about the divorce. That's not a secret, I said. It's public record. She pursed her lips. She looked at me like she was trying to figure out how to say something she didn't want to say. I heard about the baby. Claire's baby. I didn't react. I just waited. I wanted to apologize, she said. For the hospital. For what I said. It wasn't right. No, I said. It wasn't. She shifted her weight. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't know about Claire. Not until after. Tom told me. He said she was pregnant. He said he was going to marry her. That's his choice, I said. That's not my business anymore. I know, she said. I wanted you to know that I was wrong. About you. About the children. It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. I looked at her. She was old. She was tired. She was trying, in her own way, to make things right. But it wasn't enough. It didn't change anything. Thank you for saying that, I said. I appreciate it. But we're not going to be friends. We're not going to be family. That's over. I'm okay with that. I hope you are too. She nodded. She didn't say anything else. She just walked away, and I watched her go, and I felt nothing. Just a faint relief that she was gone. Marta texted me a picture of Elena. The baby. She was 2 months old now, with chubby cheeks and a tuft of dark hair and a tiny pink onesie. The text said, she's sleeping through the night. I'm a different person. I think about you all the time. I texted back, she's beautiful. I'm proud of you. She sent a smiley face. And I smiled back. The case I was working on got complicated. A property dispute between 2 neighbors who'd been fighting for years. The kind of case that was supposed to be simple but had become personal. I spent hours on it. Reading documents. Talking to witnesses. Trying to find a way to resolve it that didn't end up in court. I was good at my job. I'd always known that. But I'd never really appreciated it. I'd seen it as something I did to pay the bills, to fill the time, to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. I'd never seen it as a part of me. A part of who I was. That changed. I started seeing my work differently. Not as a job. As a calling. As something I was meant to do. The case settled out of court. I found a compromise that both sides could live with. The clients thanked me. My boss congratulated me. And I felt a sense of pride that I hadn't felt in years. I want to see Dr. Patel again. I told her about Carol. About the grocery store. About the apology. That must have been difficult, she said. It wasn't, I said. I didn't feel anything. I just told her we weren't going to be friends and I walked away. How did that feel? Good. It felt good. Because you said what you needed to say, because I didn't need to say anything else. She wanted forgiveness. She wanted absolution. And I didn't give it to her. I didn't owe her that. Powerful, she said. That's a powerful thing to recognize. That you don't owe anyone anything. I nodded. I used to think I owed everyone. I owed Tom my loyalty. I owed Carol my patience. I owed Claire my understanding. I owed my mother-in-law my silence. But I don't owe anyone anything. Not anymore. Where does that leave you? It leaves me free, I said. It leaves me able to choose. To choose who I want to be. To choose what I want to do. To choose where I want to go. And where do you want to go? I thought about it. I don't know yet. But I'm not in a hurry to figure it out. Tom called me about a month after the divorce was finalized. I didn't recognize the number at first. It was a new one. A new phone. He'd changed everything. Helen, he said. It's Tom. I wanted to call and see how you're doing. I'm fine, I said. How are you? I'm okay, he said. Claire and I are getting married. The baby's due in a few months. I thought you should know. Okay, I said. Congratulations. Helen, he said. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I hurt you. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth sooner. I'm sorry I let it go on for so long. I know, I said. You've already said that. I know, he said. I just wanted to say it again. I wanted you to know that I think about you. That I regret what I did. That I wish things had been different. Different how? I wish I'd been honest. I wish I'd told you how I felt. I wish I'd given us a chance to fix things before they got broken. Things were already broken, I said. They were broken for a long time. We just didn't want to see it. I know, he said. That's my fault. That's the part one regret the most. That I didn't see it. That I didn't try. Try now, I said. Try to be a good father. Try to be a good husband to Claire. Try to be a better person than you were with me. I will, he said. I promise. Don't promise, I said. Promises don't mean anything. Just do it. Just be it. And don't call me again. I hung up the phone and I looked at it for a long time. It was a nice phone. A new one. I'd bought it after the divorce, along with a new number and a new plan. I'd wanted a fresh start. And that's what I had. A fresh start. I didn't cry after the phone call. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything. I just felt a quiet sense of closure. A sense that this chapter was finally over. I'd been holding on to something that wasn't there. For years. And now I was letting it go. I started going to yoga classes. The kind where everyone sat in a circle and said their intentions. I didn't say mine out loud. I just kept them to myself. Intention 1, to be present. Intention 2, to be kind to myself. Intention 3, to let go of the things I couldn't control. The teacher was a woman named Lena. She had long gray hair and a voice like honey, and she always said, "You're doing great," even when I was doing terribly. I liked her. I liked the way she moved through the poses. I liked the way she looked at the room like she was proud of everyone. One day, after class, she came up to me. "You're new," she said. "I haven't seen you before." "I'm new," I said. "I've only been coming for a few weeks." "Welcome," she said. "I'm glad you're here." "I hope it's helping." "It is," I said. "It's helping more than I thought it would." "That's good," she said. "That's what it's for." The months passed. Spring turned into summer. Summer turned into fall. The leaves changed colors. The air got colder. I bought a new coat and a new pair of boots, and I walked through the park and watched the leaves fall. I thought about the waiting room sometimes. The pale green chairs. The TV screen. The high five. I thought about how it had felt to stand up and walk to that desk. To ask for something on the screen. To watch Carol's face as she realized what was happening. That was the moment. The moment I'd started to change. The moment I'd started to become someone else. Someone who didn't just sit there and take it. Someone who did something. I wanted to tell Marta about it. About how she'd been right. About how that moment had meant something. But I didn't have her number anymore. I'd gotten a new phone and lost her contact. I thought about finding her again. About looking her up. But I didn't. Some things are better left in the past. Claire had the baby. A boy. Tom named him William. After his grandfather. I heard about it through a mutual friend. The friend said Tom was happy. That he'd become the kind of father he'd always wanted to be. I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel anything. I just felt a quiet sense of acceptance. This was his life now. And I had mine. I thought about what it would have been like if I'd been the one having his child. If the IVF had worked. If we'd had a family. I'd spent years thinking about that. Years imagining it. Years hoping for it. But it hadn't happened. And I was okay with that. The case that changed everything came in late fall. A woman named Angela. She was in her 60s. Her husband had left her after 40 years of marriage. He'd taken everything. The house. The savings. The retirement account. He'd left her with nothing. She came to me because she'd heard I was good. She'd heard I could help. She sat in my office and told me her story, and I listened, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Can you help me? She said. Yes, I said. I can. I worked on her case for months. I found evidence he'd been hiding money. I found evidence he'd been planning this for years. I took him to court and I won. Angela got back her house and her savings and a little extra. She cried when she heard the verdict. She hugged me and she said, "Thank you," and I said, "You're welcome," and I meant it. That was the moment. The moment I realized that I was good at this. That I was making a difference. That I was helping people who'd been through the same thing I'd been through. That I could use my experience to make their lives better. I thought about what Dr. Patel had said. What do you want for yourself? I knew the answer now. I wanted to help. I wanted to be useful. I wanted to use everything I'd learned, everything I'd been through, to make things right for other people. I didn't need Tom. I didn't need Carol. I didn't need Claire's baby or Tom's apology or anyone else's approval. I needed to do my work and to do it well. I needed to be me. I went back to the coffee shop on a cold December morning. The same one where Marta had found me. The same one where Claire had sat across from me and told me she was pregnant. It felt like a lifetime ago. But it was only a year. I ordered my Earl Grey and I sat at my corner table and I watched the world go by. People walking with their coffee cups. People in coats and scarves. People going to work and coming home and living their lives. I thought about Tom. About Carol. About Claire. About the waiting room. About the TV screen. About all of it. And I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't jealous. I was just here. In this moment. Being me. It was enough. The new year came. I made no resolutions. I'd stopped making them. They never stuck. Instead, I just kept going. Kept doing my work. Kept taking my walks. Kept going to yoga. Kept living my life. I thought about Angela sometimes. About how she'd come to me with nothing and left with everything. About how I'd been able to help her. About how that felt. I thought about the waiting room. About Carol. About the TV screen. About the high five. About Marta and the baby. About Claire and the coffee shop. About Tom and the phone call. It all felt like a story. A story that had happened to someone else. But it had happened to me. And I'd survived it. I'd come out the other side. I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't know if I'd ever fall in love again. I didn't know if I'd ever have a family. I didn't know if I'd ever be truly happy. But I knew I was okay. I knew I was strong. I knew I could handle whatever came. And that was enough. Spring came like a slow thaw. I didn't notice it at first. I was too busy. Too focused on work. On the new cases that kept coming in. The women who found me through word of mouth. The ones who'd heard about Angela and wanted the same thing for themselves. I took them all. Every single one. Because I knew what it felt like to be the woman who needed help and didn't know where to find it. There was a woman named Patricia whose husband had emptied their joint account and fled to a state with no extradition. There was a woman named Marie who'd been married for 32 years and found out her husband had a second family in another city. There was a woman named Joan whose husband had convinced her to sign a post-nuptial agreement that left her with nothing. I worked on their cases like they were my own. I stayed late. I came in early. I drank too much coffee and slept too little, and I didn't care. Because every time I won, every time I got a woman back what was rightfully hers, I felt like I was winning something for myself too. The yoga studio closed for renovations in March. Lena gave me her personal number and told me to call if I needed anything. I never called. but I appreciated the gesture. It was nice to know someone was out there. I started running instead. I'd never been a runner. I hated it, actually. The pounding. The sweat. The way your lungs burn and your legs ache and you want to stop, but you keep going anyway. But I needed something. Something to replace the yoga. Something to fill the space. I ran in the mornings. Before work. When the streets were quiet and the air was cold and the sun was just starting to come up. I ran past the houses with the neat lawns and the driveways with the SUVs. I ran past the park where I'd never taken a child. I ran past the school where I'd never dropped anyone off. And I kept running. I got a call from Diane in April. My sister. She was planning to visit. She said she'd been worried about me. She said she wanted to see for herself that I was okay. You don't need to worry, I said. I'm fine. I know you're fine, she said. I just want to see you. It's been too long. She came for a weekend. She stayed in the guest room that used to be Tom's office. She looked at the blue kitchen and the new prints in the hallway and the couch facing the window, and she said, "This doesn't look like your house." "It's not my house," I said. "It's my house. Mine. Not ours. Not his. Mine." "Good," she said. "That's good." We drank wine and ordered takeout and talked about everything and nothing. She told me about her job and her husband and her kids. I told her about the cases and the clients and the running. I didn't tell her about Tom. I didn't tell her about Claire. I didn't tell her about the baby. But she knew. She could see it in my face. The way I didn't flinch when she mentioned his name. The way I didn't look away when she asked how I was doing. "You're really okay," she said. "I'm really okay," I said. After she left, I sat in the kitchen and looked at the blue walls. I thought about Tom. About how he'd hated that color. About how he'd said it looked like a hospital. About how I'd agreed with him at the time. How I'd said we should paint it something warmer, something more welcoming. But I'd never liked the old color. I'd just gone along with it because it was easier. Because it wasn't worth the argument. Because I'd learned, over the years, that it was better to agree than to fight. I thought about all the things I'd gone along with. All the things I'd said yes to when I'd wanted to say no. All the times I'd swallowed my words because it was easier. Because I didn't want to make trouble. Because I didn't want to be difficult. I'd been difficult once. In the waiting room. When I'd stood up and walked to that desk. When I'd asked for something on the TV. When I'd watched Carol's face as the screen flickered. That was the real me. The one who was difficult. The one who didn't just go along with things. I'd forgotten about her. But she was still there. She was always there. I started going back to the hospital. Not inside. Just past it. On my runs. I'd run by the entrance and I'd look at the doors and I'd remember. The pale green chairs. The TV screen. The high five. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. It was just a building. Just a place where things had happened. Where something had started. One morning I stopped. I stood on the sidewalk across the street and I looked at the building and I thought about everything that had happened inside it. The things I'd learned. The things I'd lost. The things I'd gained. I took a picture of it with my phone. I sent it to Marta. I didn't have her number anymore, but I sent it anyway. To the old number. Just in case. "Thank you," I said in the message. For the high five. I didn't get a reply. I didn't expect one. I got a package in the mail in May. A small box with no return address. I opened it carefully, like I was expecting something bad. But it wasn't bad. It was a book. A journal. And a note. The note said, "I thought you should have this. It's everything I couldn't say. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you told me not to call. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be the person you deserved. I'm sorry I couldn't be that person for you. I hope you forgive me someday. Tom." I looked at the book. It was a journal. A leather journal with blank pages. The kind you buy at a nice stationery store. The kind that costs too much money. I didn't open it. I didn't read it. I put it in a drawer and I closed the drawer and I didn't think about it again. Because I didn't need to know what he couldn't say. I didn't need his words. I'd had his words for 22 years and they hadn't meant anything. His actions had told the story. And the story was over. The case that took everything out of me came in June. A woman named Susan. She was 52. Her husband had been a doctor. A well-respected doctor. He'd been having an affair with a nurse at his practice for 5 years. He'd left Susan for the nurse. But before he left, he'd transferred all their assets to his sister's name. He'd taken their retirement account and their savings and the house they'd lived in for 20 years. Susan had nothing. She'd been a stay-at-home mother. She'd raised their 3 children. She'd given up her career to support his. And now she was 52 with no job, no money, and no home. This is who you help, she said. This is who you're good at helping. I heard about you. I heard you understand. I do, I said. I understand. I worked on her case for 3 months. I found the evidence. I found the doctor's sister and I got her to talk. I took him to court and I won. Susan got the house and a portion of the retirement account and a settlement that would allow her to live comfortably for the rest of her life. She didn't cry when she heard the verdict. She just sat there, looking at the judge, looking at her ex-husband, looking at me. And then she nodded. Like she'd known it would work out. Like she'd trusted me. Thank you, she said. Thank you for believing me. I always believed you, I said. That was never the question. After Susan's case, I took a week off. I went to the coast. A small town on the water, the kind with a single main street and a diner that served pie and a lighthouse that had been turned into a museum. I stayed in a bed and breakfast with a woman named Doris who told me about her husband who died 5 years ago and her garden that she'd been tending ever since. He was a good man, Doris said. He wasn't perfect. But he was good. He loved me. He loved our children. He loved our garden. We used to sit out there every evening and watch the sunset. That sounds nice, I said. It was, she said. It was nice. Not perfect. But nice. I thought about Tom. About the things we'd done together. The dinners. The movies. The walks. The vacations. I thought about the good times, the ones I'd forgotten, the ones I'd pushed aside because the bad times had taken over. We had good times. We did. It wasn't all lies. It wasn't all betrayal. There was love there once. Real love. The kind that made you believe in something. But it had faded. It had faded and we'd let it fade. We'd stopped tending the garden. We'd stopped watching the sunset. We'd stopped doing the things that made it nice. And then it was too late. I thought about that a lot. About the garden. About how you had to tend it or it would die. About how you couldn't just assume it would be fine. About how you had to work at it every day to make it grow. I'd stopped working at it. I'd been tired. I'd been hurt. I'd been angry. And I'd let it die. But it wasn't all my fault. Tom had let it die too. He'd stopped working at it. He'd stopped tending it. He'd found someone else's garden to tend. Someone younger. Someone who didn't have years of resentment built up. I didn't blame him for that. Not anymore. I understood it. People fall out of love. People change. People make mistakes. That's not a crime. That's just life. But the way he'd done it. The lies. The secrets. The 2 years of pretending. That was the part one couldn't forgive. Because forgiveness wasn't about letting go. It was about acknowledging what had happened and deciding it didn't matter anymore. And it did matter. It would always matter. Because it had broken something inside me, and that something had taken a long time to heal. I went back to the coffee shop on a rainy afternoon in July. I sat at my corner table and I watched the rain fall and I thought about everything that had happened. The waiting room. The TV. The high five. The flower shop. The apartment. Claire. The pregnancy. The divorce. The cases. The clients. The women who'd trusted me to help them. I didn't miss Tom. I didn't miss Carol. I didn't miss any of it. I missed myself. The person I'd been before. The person who'd believed in things. The person who'd trusted people. The person who'd thought that love was enough. But I'd found her again. The version of her that was stronger. Smarter. More careful. The version that knew that love wasn't enough. That trust had to be earned. That people could change, but they could also stay the same. I took a sip of my Earl Grey. It was lukewarm. The barista had forgotten to heat it properly. I didn't care. It was still tea. It was still mine. I got a text from an unknown number in August. It was Marta. She'd gotten a new phone. She'd found my number through a mutual friend. She'd kept the picture I'd sent her of the hospital. Elena is walking, she said. She's got a tooth. She's a menace. I'm exhausted. I'm happy. I'm everything. I smiled. That's wonderful, I texted back. I'm glad you found me. Me too, she said. I think about you. About the waiting room. About the high five. I told Elena the story. She'll understand it one day. She will, I said. She'll understand it. I went to a gallery opening in September. A friend from work had invited me. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay home and watch TV and not talk to anyone. But I went anyway. I was tired of saying no to things. The gallery was small. White walls. Bright lights. Paintings of landscapes and portraits and abstract shapes. I walked through the rooms and looked at the art and made small talk with strangers. It was exhausting. It was pleasant. It was life. A man came up to me. He was about my age. Gray hair. Kind eyes. He was wearing a tweed jacket and holding a glass of wine, and he looked like he belonged in a gallery. Are you enjoying the show? He said. I am, I said. I don't know much about art. But I know what I like. That's all that matters, he said. What do you like? I pointed to a painting on the far wall. A landscape. A field with a single tree. The sky was gray. The grass was green. The tree was tall and solitary. That one, I said. I like the solitude. Solitude, he said. That's an interesting word. Most people would say loneliness. It's not loneliness, I said. It's different. Loneliness is missing someone. Solitude is being okay with being alone. He nodded. I like that, he said. I'm going to remember that. We talked for a while. His name was Daniel. He was an architect. He lived in the city. He'd been divorced for 3 years. He had 2 grown children. He liked old buildings and long walks and reading books about things he didn't understand. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. I didn't think much of it. It was just a number. Just a piece of information. But when I got home that night, I found myself thinking about him. The tweed jacket. The kind eyes. The way he'd said solitude like it meant something. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't trying to find someone. I was just open. Open to the possibility. Open to whatever came next. I went to dinner with Daniel a few weeks later. He took me to a restaurant I'd never been to. Not the kind with no sign out front. The kind with a sign and a menu and a nice view of the river. We talked about our lives. His work. His children. His divorce. He'd been the one who'd left. He'd been unhappy. He'd tried to make it work. He'd failed. I don't regret it, he said. Leaving. I regret how I did it. I wasn't honest. I wasn't kind. I just left. I walked out one day and didn't come back. Did you have someone else? I said. No, he said. I was alone. I was just tired. I was tired of being in something that didn't feel like anything. I know that feeling, I said. I know it well. We didn't talk about Tom. We didn't talk about Claire. We didn't talk about the waiting room or the TV or any of it. We just talked about ourselves. About who we were now. About who we wanted to be. I went home that night and sat in my blue kitchen and thought about the dinner. About Daniel. About the way he'd said solitude like he understood it. About the way he'd talked about his marriage like it was a thing that had happened to him, not a thing he'd caused. I didn't know if I liked him. I didn't know if I wanted to see him again. But I knew I was glad I'd gone. I was glad I'd said yes to something. I was glad I wasn't the woman who said no anymore. I didn't call Daniel. I wanted to. I thought about it. I even had his number saved in my phone under his name, just in case. But I didn't call. Not because I was afraid. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. That's the thing about being alone. You get used to it. You start to like it. You start to build a life around it, a routine, a rhythm. And then someone comes along and offers to change it, and you have to decide if you want to let them. I decided to wait. To see what happened. To let things unfold naturally. And they did. Daniel called me. A week later. He asked if I wanted to go to a movie. I said yes. The movie was terrible. Some romantic comedy with predictable jokes and a predictable ending. But I didn't care. I was sitting next to someone who smelled nice and laughed at the right parts and didn't try to hold my hand when I wasn't ready. Afterward, we got coffee. Not at my coffee shop. A different one. A neutral one. He asked me about my work. I told him about Susan and Angela and the other women I'd helped. He listened. He nodded. He asked questions. That must be hard, he said. Hearing those stories every day. It is, I said. But it's also rewarding. I get to give them something they didn't have before. Hope. A way out. A reason to keep going. Did you have that, he said. When you were going through it. Did you have someone who gave you hope? I thought about it. No, I said. I had myself. I had to be my own hope. That's harder, he said. That's harder than having someone else do it for you. I know, I said. But it's better. Because you don't have to rely on anyone else. You don't have to worry about them leaving. You just have to worry about yourself. I went home that night and thought about what I'd said. You just have to worry about yourself. That was true. It was also lonely. There was a difference between being alone and being lonely, and I'd been both. I'd been alone by choice and lonely by circumstance, but I wasn't lonely anymore. I had my work. I had my clients. I had my sister. I had Marta, even if she was just a text message away. I had Daniel, maybe, if I wanted him. I had myself. That was enough. That was more than enough. The thing about Tom that I hadn't expected was that he would keep showing up. Not in person. In other ways. In the mail. In the occasional text from an unknown number. In the packages that would appear on my doorstep with no return address. I stopped opening them. I put them in the garage. I told myself I'd deal with them later. I never did. One day, I went out to the garage to look for something and I saw the stack of boxes. I'd been ignoring them for months. There were 8 of them. 8 packages from Tom. 8 things I hadn't opened. I sat down on the floor of the garage and I opened them. One by one. The first one was a photo album. The one we'd made after our honeymoon. Pictures of us in Paris. In Rome. In London. We'd been young and happy and we hadn't known anything about anything. The second one was a sweater. My sweater. The one I'd lost years ago. The one I'd thought was gone forever. He'd kept it. He'd kept it all these years. The third one was a letter. A long letter. Pages and pages. I didn't read it. I just held it in my hands and felt the weight of it. The fourth one was a key. A small brass key. I didn't know what it was for. The fifth one was a ring. My wedding ring. The one I'd taken off the night I found out about Claire. I'd thrown it in the trash and he must have fished it out. The sixth one was a photograph of us. From a Christmas party. The one Claire had seen. I was wearing a red dress and Tom had his arm around me and we both looked so normal. So married. So in love. The seventh one was a box of chocolates. From a store I'd never heard of. They were melted and ruined and I didn't know if they'd been that way when he sent them or if they'd melted in the garage. The eighth one was a note. It said, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you told me not to call. But I wanted you to know that I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about all of it. The good things. The things we had. The things I ruined. I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry. I put everything back in the boxes. I put the boxes back on the shelf. And I closed the garage door and I went inside and I made myself a cup of tea and I didn't think about any of it. Because I didn't need to. I'd already moved on. He was the one who was stuck. The case that came in October was the hardest one yet. A woman named Rachel. She was 49. She'd been married for 25 years. Her husband was a pastor. A respected pastor. A man who'd spent his life preaching about faithfulness and devotion and the sanctity of marriage. He'd been having an affair with a member of his congregation. For 3 years. He'd used church funds to pay for their trips. He'd lied to his board. He'd lied to his children. He'd lied to everyone. And then he'd left. He'd left Rachel with nothing. No money. No house. No reputation. Because he'd told everyone she was the one who'd been unfaithful. He'd spread rumors. He'd turned their friends against her. He'd made her the villain of his story. I don't know what to do, Rachel said. I don't have anyone. I don't have any proof. It's just my word against his. It's not just your word, I said. It's the truth. And the truth is on your side. I worked on her case like I'd never worked on anything before. I found the evidence. I found the credit card receipts. I found the hotel reservations. I found the emails. I found the woman who'd been having the affair, and I got her to talk. Rachel got her house back. She got her reputation back. She got her life back. And the pastor, the respected pastor, got a very different kind of attention. His church asked him to resign. His family stopped speaking to him. His friends, the ones who'd believed his lies, started to see the truth. I don't know how to thank you, Rachel said. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out, I said. You would have found a way. You're stronger than you think. I know that now, she said. I know that now. I started running more. Longer distances. I ran past the hospital. Past the coffee shop. Past the gallery where I'd met Daniel. I ran past all the places that had been part of my story, and I kept running past them because they were just places now. Just buildings. Just streets. Just memories. Daniel asked me out again. A dinner. A real dinner. At a restaurant with a tablecloth and candles and a menu that I didn't understand. I said yes. He picked me up at my house. He walked me to the car. A BMW. I didn't care about cars. But I noticed it. The kind of car that someone who had their life together drove. Nice car, I said. It's just a car, he said. It gets me where I need to go. That's all a car needs to do, I said. Get you where you need to go. He looked at me. That's a good line, he said. I'm going to remember that. We went to dinner and we talked. We talked about his work. About the buildings he designed. About the ones he wished he'd designed. We talked about his children. His daughter who was in college. His son who was in high school. We talked about his ex-wife. The woman he'd left. The woman he still cared about, even if he didn't want to be married to her anymore. She's a good person, he said. She didn't deserve what I did. Maybe not, I said. But you did what you did. And now you have to live with it. I know, he said. I do live with it. Every day. We didn't talk about Tom. We didn't talk about my divorce. We just talked about ourselves. About the people we were now. About the people we wanted to be. I thought about my house. The blue kitchen. The new prints in the hallway. The couch facing the window. I thought about how I'd made it mine. How I'd taken a space that had been ours and turned it into something that was just for me. I thought about the waiting room. The pale green chairs. The TV screen. The high five. I thought about how that moment had changed everything. How it had started something that I couldn't have predicted. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was next. But I knew I was okay. I knew I was going to be okay. The thing about endings is that they're not really endings. They're just transitions. A door closing. A window opening. A space where something was and now something else is. I thought about that a lot. About transitions. About the spaces between things. About what happens when you're not in one place or another. When you're just in between. I was in between. Between who I'd been and who I was becoming. Between the past and the future. Between the woman who'd sat in that waiting room and the woman who was sitting in her blue kitchen, drinking tea, thinking about a man named Daniel. I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know if I was going to end up anywhere. But I was okay with that. Because the journey was the point. The getting there. The becoming. Daniel kissed me that night. In the doorway of my house. He leaned in, and he kissed me, and it was gentle and nice, and I didn't feel anything. Not in a bad way. Not in a there's something missing way. In a this is just a kiss, and that's okay, way. I wasn't looking for passion. I wasn't looking for fireworks. I was looking for connection. A quiet connection. A shared understanding. He pulled back and looked at me. Good night, he said. Good night, I said. I closed the door and I leaned against it and I thought about the kiss. It had been nice. It had been safe. It had been exactly what I needed. I didn't know if I was going to see him again. I didn't know if I wanted to. But I knew I was glad I'd let it happen. I knew I was glad I was still open. I thought about what Dr. Patel had said. What do you want for yourself? The answer was different now. I wanted to keep helping people. I wanted to keep running. I wanted to keep painting my walls and arranging my furniture and making my life my own. I wanted to keep being open. Keep being brave. Keep being the woman who walked to the reception desk and asked for something to be on the TV. I wanted to be the woman who high-fived a stranger. The woman who laughed. The woman who kept going. I went to sleep that night with the kiss still on my lips. I woke up the next morning and I didn't feel different. I didn't feel changed. I just felt like me. And that was enough. That was more than enough. The case that I finished in November was the one that made me realize how far I'd come. A woman named Susan. I'd helped her before. The one whose husband had been a doctor. The one who'd been left with nothing. She called me to say thank you. Again. She'd been reading my articles in the local paper. I'd started writing them. Little pieces about legal rights for women. About what to do when you find yourself alone. About how to rebuild your life. I saw your name, she said. I had to call. I had to tell you how proud I am of you. I'm proud of you too, I said. You did the work. You made it happen. Not without you, she said. Not without you. I thought about that. About how we all need someone. How we all need help. How the worst thing you can do is believe you have to do it alone. I'd learned that. The hard way. But I'd learned it. And now I was helping other people learn it too. The final conversation happened on a Thursday. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. But Tom called and I answered, and he asked if we could meet, and I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to close the door myself. Maybe I needed to hear his voice one last time to know that I was done. We met at the restaurant. The one with the red booths. The one where we'd had so many dinners. I got there first. I ordered water. I waited. He walked in 15 minutes late. Same as always. He looked older. Thinner. The kind of thin that comes from stress, from not sleeping, from trying to do too much. He sat down across from me and he didn't order anything. He just looked at me like he was trying to memorize my face. You look good, he said. I am good, I said. How are you tired, he said. The baby doesn't sleep. Claire is struggling. I'm trying to hold everything together. That sounds hard, I said. It is, he said. It's harder than I thought it would be. I thought it would be easier. I thought if I had the baby, if I had the family, it would all make sense. But it doesn't. It's just more work. I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. I miss you, he said. I know I have no right to say that. I know I'm the one who left. I know I'm the one who ruined everything. But I miss you. I miss the way things were. The way things were wasn't good, I said. You just don't remember the bad parts. I remember, he said. I remember everything. The fights. The silences. The way we'd sit in the living room and not say anything. The way I'd come home late and you'd already be in bed. I remember all of it. And you still miss it. I miss the feeling of being known. Of being seen. You knew me, Helen. You knew me better than anyone. And I threw that away. I threw it away for something that wasn't even real. Claire is real, I said. The baby is real. I know, he said. I know they're real. But the thing I thought I was getting, the thing I thought would fix everything, that wasn't real. That was just an idea. A fantasy. A way to escape what I didn't want to face. And what was that, I said. What didn't you want to face? He looked at his hands. That I was unhappy. That I didn't know how to fix it. That I was scared. That I was failing at the one thing I was supposed to be good at. Being a husband, being a person, he said. Being a good person. I thought if I left, if I started over, I could be the person I wanted to be. But I can't. Because I'm still me. I'm still the same person who made all the same mistakes. I looked at him. He was crying. Silent tears running down his face. He didn't wipe them away. He just sat there and let them fall. I'm not going to forgive you, I said. I'm not going to tell you it's okay. Because it's not okay. What you did wasn't okay. The lies. The secrets. The way you made me feel like I was the problem. None of that was okay. I know, he said. I know it wasn't. But I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm not sad. I'm not anything. I'm just done. I'm done with this. With you. With all of it. He nodded. He didn't argue. He just sat there and let me say what I needed to say. I loved you, I said. I loved you for a long time. Even when you didn't deserve it. Even when you were pushing me away. I loved you because I made a promise and I meant it. But love isn't enough. It was never enough. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life wishing it had been. What are you going to do? He said. I'm going to keep helping people. I'm going to keep building my life. I'm going to keep running and painting my walls and making my house my own. I'm going to keep being the person I'm becoming. That sounds good, he said. That sounds like you. It is me, I said. It's always been me. I just forgot for a while. He reached across the table. I let him. He took my hand and he held it and he looked at me with those tired eyes. I'm sorry, he said. For everything. For all of it. I'm sorry I wasn't the person you deserved. You were the person I chose, I said. That was my mistake. Not yours. He let go of my hand. He stood up. He looked at me one more time. Goodbye, Helen, he said. Goodbye, Tom. He walked out of the restaurant. I watched him go. He didn't look back. I didn't expect him to. I sat there for a long time. The waitress came over and asked if I wanted anything else. I said no. I just sat there and looked at the empty chair across from me. And then I stood up. I paid for my water. I walked out of the restaurant and I didn't look back. The decisive action came the next morning. I woke up early. I made coffee. I sat in my blue kitchen and I thought about everything I'd been through. The waiting room. The TV. The high five. The flower shop. The apartment. Claire. The pregnancy. The divorce. The cases. The clients. The women I'd helped. I thought about Tom. About the way he'd looked at me in the restaurant. About the way he'd said goodbye. I thought about Carol. About the grocery store. About the apology that wasn't enough. I thought about Claire. About the coffee shop. About the baby she'd had. The baby I'd wanted. The baby that wasn't mine. And I thought about myself. The woman who'd sat in that waiting room and heard her mother-in-law say she was barren. The woman who'd walked to the reception desk and asked for something on the TV. The woman who'd high-fived a stranger. The woman who'd kept going. I stood up. I walked to the drawer where I'd put Tom's journal. The leather one. The one with the blank pages. I opened it. I read it. All of it. He'd written about everything. About the affair. About the lies. About the guilt. About the baby. About Claire. About me. He'd written about how much he missed me. About how he'd made a mistake. About how he wished he could go back. I read it all. And then I closed the journal and I put it back in the drawer. I didn't need it. I didn't need his words. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need any of it. I walked to the living room. I looked at the couch facing the window. I looked at the prints on the wall. I looked at the space that was mine. And I made a decision. I called a lawyer. Not for me. For the women I'd been helping. I set up a trust. A fund. A way to give back. I put money into it. Money I'd saved. Money I'd earned. Money that was mine. I named it after the waiting room. The Helen Hart Foundation. A place where women could come to get the help they needed. Legal help. Emotional help. Financial help. The kind of help I'd needed and hadn't gotten. I didn't do it for Tom. I didn't do it for Carol. I didn't do it for anyone but myself. I did it because I could. Because I was strong. Because I was capable. Because I was the woman who'd walked to the reception desk and asked for something on the TV. And I was done waiting. I told Daniel about the foundation a few weeks later. We were at dinner. A different restaurant. A nicer one. He'd asked me out again and I'd said yes. That's amazing, he said. That's really amazing. You're giving back. You're helping people. I'm just doing what I should have done a long time ago, I said. I'm using what I went through to make things better for other people. That's what makes you who you are, he said. That's what I love about you. He said love. I heard it. I didn't react. I just let it sit there, in the air between us. We finished dinner. He walked me home. He kissed me at the door. It was nice. It was safe. It was exactly what I needed. I went inside and I sat on my couch and I looked out the window. The street was quiet. The houses were dark. The world was still. I thought about everything that had happened. The waiting room. The TV. The high five. The flower shop. The apartment. Claire. The pregnancy. The divorce. The cases. The clients. The foundation. Daniel. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was next. But I knew I was okay. I knew I was going to be okay. Because I was the woman who'd walked to the reception desk. I was the woman who'd asked for something on the TV. I was the woman who'd high-fived a stranger. I was the woman who'd stopped waiting. I went to the hospital one last time. Not for a checkup. Not for anything medical. Just to walk through the waiting room. To see the pale green chairs. To stand where I'd stood when I asked Amber to put something on the TV. The room was empty. It was late. The reception desk was unstaffed. The TV was off. I sat down in one of the chairs. I looked at the spot where I'd sat when Carol had said what she said. I looked at the spot where I'd stood when I walked to the desk. I looked at the spot where the pregnant woman had sat when she'd high-fived me. And I smiled. I stood up. I walked out of the hospital. I didn't look back. I got in my car. A new one. A Subaru. I'd traded in the Honda. I'd wanted something different. Something that felt like a fresh start. I drove home. I parked in my driveway. I walked into my house. The blue kitchen. The prints in the hallway. The couch facing the window. All of it mine. I got a letter from Claire a few months later. She'd found my address through a mutual friend. She wanted me to know that she was okay. That the baby was okay. That she'd left Tom. That she'd realized he wasn't the person she thought he was. That she was raising the baby on her own and she was happy. I read the letter. I put it in the drawer with the journal. And I didn't think about it again. Because Claire wasn't my story. She was just a character in it. A person who'd come and gone. A person who'd done the right thing in the end. I didn't need to hear from her. I didn't need to know how she was doing. I just needed to know that I was okay. And I was. I think about the waiting room sometimes. The pale green chairs. The TV screen. The high five. I think about it when I'm running. When I'm in my blue kitchen. When I'm sitting on my couch looking out the window. I think about how that moment changed everything. How it took me from being someone who waited to someone who did. I don't know what's next. I don't know if I'll ever fall in love again. I don't know if I'll ever have a family. I don't know if I'll ever be truly happy. But I know I'm strong. I know I'm capable. I know I can handle whatever comes. Because I did it before. I sat in that waiting room and I heard the words and I didn't break. I stood up. I walked to that desk. I asked for something on the TV. And the screen showed her records, patients spreading false information. Advised to seek counseling. She tried to grab the remote. Security was faster. A pregnant woman high-fived me. That was the start. The moment I stopped being the woman who waits and became the woman who acts. And I've been acting ever since.